So friends, today is Purim Katan, the minor Purim. So just to put this in quick context, so this year's a leap year. Every 2 or 3 years, we have an extra month in order to keep the lunar calendar, which is basically our calendar, in sync with the seasons, the solar calendar, in as much that the lunar calendar, the 12 months of the lunar calendar are 11 days shy of the solar year. So we're falling back 11 days every year against the backdrop of the seasons. And the Torah commands, for example, that Pesach be observed in the spring. Therefore, there's a need to adjust, as it were, the calendar. Every 2 or 3 years, we add 30 days. Which month do we add? The last month of the year, which is Adar. Nisan, the month of the Exodus, is the month number 1 the Torah prescribes. In fact, that's the very first commandment. Of all 613 commandments, the first mitzvah is related to the Jewish calendar, the fact that Nisan, the month of redemption, be our month number 1. So Adar is month number 12. So that's the month that an additional month is inserted, making the year now 13 months. Now, when do we going to observe Purim? Purim is the 14th day and the 15th day. 14th day for open cities, 15th day for walled cities like Jerusalem. Of Adar. So the conclusion of the Gemara is that we observe it in the second Adar, not the first. And the reason is because we want to observe Purim as close as possible to Pesach to create the momentum of redemption. Pesach is redemption, Purim is redemption, and this is contributing to momentum, a third and final redemption, our own redemption from exile. 3 is in halacha something permanent. So you want to have them in close proximity and create this, again, momentum. Hence, Purim is deferred to month number 2. So if this would not be a leap year, Purim would be today. Today is the 14th of Purim, and it's called the minor Purim. Let's begin our journey of discovery of how profound today's day is. Shockingly, in a very, of course, positive way. So let's begin looking at the quotations. It's all going to be based on the sources here. We're looking now, friends, at in source number 1, the final halacha of the code of Jewish law, Orach Chaim. Now listen up, don't read, so you understand what I'm telling you now. The code of Jewish law was written by Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the first code of Jewish law. It has 4 books dealing with 4 very different areas of Jewish life. And all 4 books only deal with Jewish life as it applies nowadays post destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, all the practical laws. So there's the laws of marriage and divorce and of damages, and disputes. But the first section, called Orach Chaim, which means pathway in life, deals with the daily conduct of a Jew. And it begins with the way a Jew wakes up in the morning. And it concludes with, after going through all of the daily stuff, then it talks about the laws of Shabbos, the next thing we encounter each week, and then Reish Chodesh each month, and then the various Yomim Tovim, and it concludes with the final holiday of the year. Again, a year, the months begin in Nisan. What's the final holiday? Is Purim. So the final laws of the first section, the Orach Chaim, are the laws of Purim, and you understand why in a simple level, because it's the final holiday of the calendar. Last section of this first book deals with all of the holidays in sequence. But the very final chapter is Purim Katan. Even though it's observed before the actual Purim, why would it be relegated to the very last discussion? A, it doesn't happen every year, or only once every 2 and 3 years we observe a Purim Katan. And B, we only observe Purim Katan because it's a reflection, it's called the small Purim, of the larger Purim. So first we discuss the primary Purim, and then finally the small Purim. Let's see what it says. On the 14th and 15th of Adar, 1 Purim Katan, we did not recite the confessional supplications, which is Tachanun. We didn't say it yesterday at Mincha, nor will you say today Shacharis, nor chapter 20 of Psalms, which is only said on a regular weekday. Okay, that word is eulogies. There's different ways to spell it, but eulogies and fasting are forbidden. Now, it is not mentioned here in the text. The words I just read are from the Shulchan Aruch itself, Rabbi Yosef Cairo. What comes now, starting the word some, now listen up, don't read because you won't understand what you're reading. The Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, as mentioned to you, was authored by Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who lived in Cairo and then later in Tzvas. He was a student of the Arizal. Many years later, many generations later, in Krakow, Poland, glosses, notes were added to the Shulchan Aruch, and it's subsequently published in every standard Shulchan Aruch. Glosses added by Rabbi Moishe Israelis, known as the Ramah, the chief rabbi of Krakow, who wrote additions, glosses, little notes to the text of the Shulchan Aruch. What is he adding? He basically adds where the Ashkenaz custom differs from the Sephardi custom. Rabbi Yosef Cairo was, of course, a Sephardi and based his rulings primarily on Maimonides, the Rambam, who was a Sephardi from Spain. But there are other authorities, notably Rabbeinu Osher, who lived in Germany, and other Ashkenazi authorities that in many areas of Jewish conduct and practice, there is a different ruling, a different custom. So the Ramah, he adds for the reader's benefit and makes this work now absolutely universal, where the Ashkenaz custom differs. Sometimes it's not a question of Ashkenaz custom as opposed to Sephardi custom. Sometimes it's simply he adds more detail to the information, the ruling, the halacha that Rabbi Yosef Cairo writes. Okay? Case in point is what I'm going to read now, which is not a different custom, but more detail. So after the three dots, that's the Ramah, Moishe Israelis. So he writes, some authorities maintain that one is obligated to feast and rejoice today, just like the first Purim, no different. That's some authorities. However, this is not the custom. We're not obligated to feast and rejoice on Purim Katan. Nonetheless, continues the Ramah, one ought to add to one's meal somewhat. Today, one should add to one's meal, making it somewhat festive in recognition and celebration of the minor Purim. And then it concludes, as the verse states, he who is of good heart is perpetually feasting. V'toiv leiv mishte tamid. A good heart, literally, is always looking for a reason to party. So there's an opportunity to feast. A person who is of good heart. So here's an opportunity that one, since there is an opinion that says one should, even though one doesn't have to, but since you could, obviously, then go ahead. Then he says you should add to your meal, and then he concludes by saying, he's of good heart, is perpetually feasting. The next quote tells us everything follows the conclusion. The fact that the code of Jewish law that deals with a Jew's daily conduct ends with these words, this means it's the culmination of living Jewishly, which we will now explain. Already you're getting the sense that the culmination is celebration. Isn't that good news, friends? Let's go a little bit deeper. Text number 3. Text number 3 is a quote from the book of Tehillim. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi somit. I perpetually place God before me. The Ramah, the same Ramah, but Moishe Israelis chose to write this as an addition to the opening words of the Shulchan Aruch. So he gets the opening word and the final word. and many notations in between, many additions in between. So how does he choose to open the introduction to the code of Jewish law, practical daily living for the Jew? Shavisia Hashem Lenegdi Summit, I perpetually place God before me. Now, please notice, as the Birkei Yosef, this is the Chidah, the famous Chidah, notes, Rabbi Yosef David Azulai was his name. He was one of the great scholars of several generations ago. So he writes, notice like this, the word Tomid, I have it in bold, both in Hebrew and in English, perpetually, appears in the Ramah's opening words and closing words. Opening words, I place God before me continuously. Closing words, he who's of good heart is perpetually fasting. That's how it starts and ends. So the Chidah continues and says, this is alluded to in that which it says we're commanded to bring every day, look at text number 4, to each day as a perpetual ascent offering. Same word again, Tom, it bold for you, for your benefit, friends. So do you see that you draw the connection? We're commanded every day to bring 2 offerings, a morning one and an afternoon one. That's why we daven Shachas and Mincha. So there's 2 tomids, two things one has to always bear in mind, perpetually, reflected by the 2 offerings and the 2 verses that the Ramah starts and ends with. Now I'm going to explain to you the significance of why it starts with, why the Ramah chooses to begin with, I place God before me continuously, and conclude with, he who's of good heart is perpetually feasting. Before that, I want you to look at, I'm not going to go through all the quotes here, but source 11, look at fine number 11. Taz, which is a commentary to Rizov, a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch on the Ramah, writes, he says like this, he's asked a question and answers. The Ramah just stated, the first quote, the first source, friends, that one should add to one's meal somewhat. Why not conclude with that? Why does he have to bring a verse? He who's of good heart is perpetually feasting. So the Taz says, what the Ramah is really hinting to is go all out. It should really be like a Purim celebration today. Seriously. So our question is, if he means that, why not spell it out? And that we're going to now explain the depth of all of this. So what are we going to explain now? Explaining the opening words and the closing words of the Shulchan Aruch, of the Ramah, as he adds his glosses, that both talk about perpetual Tomid, forever. The first one, I place God before me forever. And the second, one is of good heart, is perpetually feasting. What's the message here? Very profound and very beautiful. Edifying and transforming messages. Let's begin in the remaining minutes that we have. The Ramah is saying, as the opening words, before, my dear Jew, my dear child, before you embark on observing all of the laws we're going to map out in this code of Jewish law, starting with the way you get up in the morning. Jew wakes up in the morning, the first thing, he puts his kippah on his head, he sits up in his bed, he bows his head, he puts his 2 hands together, and he says, Moida Ani, and then he washes Netilas Yadayim, ideally by his bed, and then continues, and he must go to the bathroom and relieve himself and wash himself, wash his eyes, rinse his mouth, all of the details, and then say the morning blessings. And so it goes on for the rest of the day and the rest of one's life. So the Ramah is saying before this all starts, Kindalach, my dear fellow Jew, what is this all about? And he quotes the verse from Tehillim, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, I place God before me continuously. In a word, this is about a relationship with God. Don't forget him. As opposed to what? As opposed to being religious, as opposed to being pious, as opposed to whatever other agenda person. I love this. You described this beautiful, it's wonderful. I'm going to get a lot of brownie points in the hereafter. All very nice. But these are all selfish motivations. Why do any of this? Because God is before me at all times and wants to have a relationship with me. That's why I'm doing this. That's that introductory verse. Because it's easy to get lost in all of the rituals and the observances and grow, and he's learning and he's becoming and becoming. With the inevitable ups and downs, etc. There's the failures, there's the victories, there's the achievements, but it can all be about me. I sinned, I did a mitzvah, I failed, I achieved, I went up in level, I went down in level, and it could start and end there. Just about his own religious achievements and reward, or maybe for some people it's to get respect in the community. He's a religious person, he's a scholar. It's a very obviously very selfish agenda. So the Ramah wants to open up our eyes before we start the whole code of Jewish law. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. Again, it's this word continuous. Tamid, that is the recurring theme here. I place God before me always. God always wants to be part of your life, and that's why we're doing this. It's about a relationship. Like in a marriage, a person can have all kinds of agendas why he wants to get married. And that's how it's going to start. It always starts selfishly. Why are you getting married? Because you want to live a life of service? No, you want to be fulfilled. And this woman, it appears, will do it the best for me. Nobody's perfect, but hey, we'll settle on her. Why? He can and he can never progress beyond this, God forbid. Because she fulfills me, and that's why. I love you means I love the way you make me feel. Says that that may be what got you interested in the first place, but that's not what a marriage is. As you start, that was pre-chuppah, that was the dating time. The dating time. Why this girl? It's got to be selfish. Objectively, why? Don't just blindly the first girl meet you marry. I'll devote my life to you forever. This you want to marry this girl selfishly because she makes you feel good on all the levels that we're looking for fulfillment. Very nice, but then when it comes to the chuppah, you embark on the journey of life of marriage. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. It's about a relationship. And about fulfilling her needs, and about inviting her into your life, making room for her in your life. Making room means putting the ego aside. There's no room for anybody else. That's the foundation. After the whole thing is over, we've gone through all of the laws. What's the final verse? Toiv lev mishta tamid, unbridled joy. Simcha. What's that? The joy that is critical to the privilege that I'm connected to you, the result of the mitzvah. I put on film, I'm keeping Shabbos kosher, and I'm connecting to you. You're part of my life. I fulfilled your deepest desire, which is to be part of my life. That's a crazy joy. That's the culmination that the Ramah is pointing out in the final words. And it's Dafka Purim Katan. Of all the contexts that tell us what the culmination and summation of all of Yiddishkeit is, what it should lead to is this incredible joy that the Eibush to the Almighty is, I'm connected. That's the word mitzvah means, connected. By divine providence, we're told that in the context of what? Of Purim Katan. This is what I'm telling you, friends. I'm telling you, I'm sharing with you a beautiful talk of the Purim Katan is the source of this great joy for a whole life, which is why it's the final words of the first volume of the Code of Jewish Law, which deals with Orach Chaim, the way of life, not Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim, that's the light of life. This is Orach Chaim, the pathway of life. So we learn that the great joy is what? Where do we learn that's all about this incredible, wild, crazy joy? Gewalt. God's connected to me. I'm connected to Him. We're one. In every moment that I fulfill His will. So what's the context? Purim Katan. Of all things, Purim, the minor Purim, that happens only once every 2 or 3 years. It's already 5 to 7, so we'll try and just give you a little bit of the gist. First question is, Purim Katan is the source of Simcha. Sukkot is the source of Simcha. It's about Simcha Seinu. The short answer to that is, it is. But the truth is that Sukkot is somewhat removed from us. Because the way Sukkot is to be observed, you need the Beit HaMikdash, the offerings, going to the Beit HaMikdash, seeing God. We don't have that today. We don't have. The joy of Sukkot is somewhat muted. We cannot fulfill Sukkot properly. Purim was born in exile. The story of Purim is between the first and second temples under Achashverosh's rule, and even after the story of Purim, the Jews are still in exile. That's a much more relatable Yom Tov. That's number one. It talks to us much closer because it's in our world. Moreover, Sukkot is Yom Tov. Chol HaMoed is quasi Yom Tov. So you're joyous. How? By disconnecting from the world. We're not working. So you're not on Yom Tov. And even Chol HaMoed is quasi. Not so Purim. Purim is the ordinary weekday. We drive, etc. And mind you, when is the big Purim feast? After we've finished all the mitzvahs. Pure joy. Much more relatable. That's why Purim is the source. But why Purim Katan? Gewalt. Explain Purim Katan now in the few minutes that we have. Let's begin our journey to appreciate why this day, today, Friday, today, the 14th of Adar, 5784, this is the day that teaches us the ultimate joy. Why? Precisely, let me tell you right at the outset, all truth comes in paradox, and the deeper the truth, the deeper the paradox. Precisely because it's not real Yom Tov, and the Ramah just finished telling us that some say you have to feast, but that's not the ruling, but you should a little bit, and then he brings a verse like where nothing's clear. And as I told you before, the Taz, the super commentary on the Ramah, says when the Ramah brings this final verse, he is of good heart, perpetually feasting, he means go all out. And our question is, if you mean it, say it. Why is it's also shrouded in? So listen carefully, friends. There are 3 levels of observance. There's what the Torah says, what the sages say, and Jewish custom. The Raise, the Rabbanon, Minig. Now, on a basic level, which is more important, obviously, biblical law is the most important. Rabbinic law is then of secondary significance, and Jewish customs is of third significance. And they're not just 3 rungs, one below the other, but they're different worlds. Customs are custom. Biblical law, tefillin, Pesach, kosher, fasting, Kippur, and rabbinic law is somewhere in between. On a deeper level, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. The deepest is custom. A Jewish minhag is the deepest connection. Rabbinic law is not as deep, and biblical law is a connection, but not even as deep as rabbinic law. Just to see the quote for that, this is like an astounding statement. Look at quote number 12. The words of the sages are more precious for us than the words of Torah. What? What does this mean? Explanation. By way of illustration, there are three kinds of servant, my friends. There's a servant, the master says what to do, he does it. Beautiful, rewarded, loyal, but it starts and ends there. What he's told, he does, and that's it. Okay? Second level of servant, the master hints. Of course, he does what he's told explicitly, but even if there's a hint, he picks up on the hint and he does it. So the first case, the master says, bring me a glass of cold water. He brings it. He doesn't say anything, doesn't do anything, stands there idly. The second service, the master says, oh, it's hot today. Or I'm hot. He understands and runs and brings him a glass of cold water. Third servant is so in tune that he knows what the master wants, even if he doesn't even hint to it. He's so selfless, he just intuitively knows, because he loves his master with every fiber of his being, and what the master desires, he desires because he feels it. That's the difference between Torah law, where God spells it out, rabbinic law, where God hints it, and custom, where God doesn't even hint it. We just know what you want. Now, the question is, friends, and we're running out of time. Okay, I just got to say now to wrap all this up, Purim Katan, it's like, it's the third category, it's the custom. And not only is it a custom, it's such a custom that the Ramah won't even spell it out. Hakofis is also a custom, but the Ramah tells us to do Hakofis on Simchas Torah. But Purim Katan, he doesn't say feast. You should add in your feast, and then he adds a verse that the verse is saying go all out, but he doesn't spell it out. Why? Because Purim Katan has come from the deepest place in the Jew of joy. I know what you want, and it's the greatest joy to be in a relationship with God that I'm not being told to be joyous, that I feel within. We need to explain this much more. Okay, God willing, next week, whenever the occasion will be. But I'm going to conclude with this. You can bear with me another minute. You ever be another minute, boys? A minute and a half. Why is it? We see in human life, friends, that the deeper a desire you have, the less you can put it in words. Why doesn't it? Can you write in an essay how much you love your children, your wife, yourself? You can write an essay how much you like your car because it's extraneous to you. I like the car because of this, because of this. That's why love songs expressed with nuance, poetry, gestures. The deeper the love, you can't even put it even in nuance. So the more external something is to you, the more you can put it in words. The closer it is to your heart, the less. So rabbinic Torah law, God spells it out. That's one level of God's desire. Rabbinic law is coming from a deeper place within God. He just hints to it. And customs is so deep within Hashem, but he doesn't even articulate it. Now, of course, God could, but God behaves and mirrors the way we're made. Just like for us, the deeper something is, the more you can't say. It's just in a look and a hug, but you can't say the words. It's too deep. So we're made in the image of God, and God has chosen to express himself in our image. It's reciprocal. So too, there's the essential desire, the inner desire, and the more external desire, which would be Torah or rabbinical and custom. So we're saying that Purim Katan, which is such a custom that even the Ramah doesn't say you should do it, this really brings out we and God are one in the deepest way, the essence. Therefore, the joy of Purim Katan is the greatest joy, precisely because we're not commanded to, it's not even hinted to. And that's why it's the end of the Shulchan Aruch. The end of, where does a custom come from? Where does a custom come from? How do we know what God wants? Because our soul is a part of him. We just know. So the end of the Shulchan Aruch is saying, you know what the whole point of all the thousands of laws you've been observing and doing? It's to reveal how you're one with Hashem and reveal that oneness in all the details of your life. That's the point. And that brings to the crazy joy. They can't even be described or hinted to. That's the culmination of the whole Shulchan Aruch. The whole code of Jewish law, the whole point of all mitzvahs is to unlock essential oneness with God, and that pervade every detail of our lives as outlined.
My apologies. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Is outlined in all of the laws. You follow? Fellas, we got a general idea. We rushed at the end a little bit, but I hope you have an appreciation. In summary, the purpose of tefillin and of everything you do is to reveal the essence of your soul, which is one with God, and reveal that in your body, in the minutiae of your life, and illuminate the world with it. You are one. You don't have to be commanded. Commandment means there's three things. There's me, God, and the commandment. No, we are one. The mitzvahs reveal that connection. And that's expressed where? In that which is not a commandment and barely even articulated as a custom. It springs from within because we are one with Hashem in the deepest way. A wonderful Shabbos and a very joyous Purim Katan.